Planet of the Fakes 4 Kids, and Pigstar. News. A relative stole the baby name I wanted to use, but in the end I was thankful. In the early days of our relationship, my husband and I sometimes talked about what we'd name our future kids. Mulling over the names, we were really mulling over our future, wondering what it would look like, what we'd be like. The names we chose were representative of that imagined future. Serena for a girl, I really liked the idea of Rena as a nickname, and Sasha for a boy, we both liked fictional characters with the name. We were together for 13 years before we had our first child, and for most of that time we were committed to those names. For the last couple of those 13 years, we struggled to get pregnant. We didn't have the energy to ask ourselves if those names still fit, afraid that if we diverged from the original names, we might be diverging from the future we'd conceived of. When my mom died a year and a half before I got pregnant, however, the names we'd chosen no longer seemed relevant. We knew if I eventually got pregnant, we'd name our child after my mom. We both come from a long line of Ashkenazi Jews, and Ashkenazi Jews have a tradition of naming their children after deceased relatives. This could mean naming them the same exact name or a name that starts with the same first letter. It was a practice that was especially prevalent in my mom's family. Her older sister Paula was named after a paternal great-grandmother, and my mom was named after a maternal great-grandmother. My brother and I have middle names that were chosen in honor of Paula, who died at 5 months old. Though neither my husband nor I are particularly religious, the reasoning behind the practice, to keep the deceased person's memory alive, resonated with us. Would a name feel less special if it was shared? When I finally became pregnant, we began talking about girls' names and came up with a few that were close to my mom's name, Rosalie. We kept coming back to Rose, but each time, we paused. A cousin of mine had just had a daughter he named Rose. We weren't sure how we or they would feel about sharing the name. Would the name feel less special if it was shared? Were there rules to this kind of decision? Should I check with my cousin first to see how he felt? Boys' names were mostly ignored because we couldn't agree on any, so we weren't very prepared when we found out we were having a boy. But at least the Rose issue was a moot point. After an annoyingly extensive search for our boy names, we gave up, settling on Lee, for the latter part of Rosalie, as a middle name for our son. We didn't like Lee enough for it to be a first name, so for the first name we started over at the beginning of the alphabet. We quickly fell in love with the name Asher, which means happy in Hebrew. It felt like the perfect name for a new beginning. A year later, we revisited the Rose conundrum in earnest when I found out I was pregnant with a girl. This time around I felt more committed to the name. With even more of a gap between my mom and her next grandchild, it seemed even more urgent to ensure a connection between the two. I almost reached out to my cousin, but as I thought about it more, I began to realize Rose no longer fit the way it thought it should, just like Serena and Sasha no longer did, either. I had started associating the name with my cousin's daughter, and I was concerned that every time I called her by the nickname, Ro, my mom's nickname, I would think of my mom. I didn't want my mom's identity to consume my relationship with my daughter, and I knew if I let grief and worry dictate this decision, it might. Ruby is now 2, and I regularly tell her and Asher stories about my mom. I like that my mom is part of their names and they'll always carry her with them. Like my mom, Ruby has blonde hair and light eyes. She's also full of energy and stubbornness in a way that's uniquely her. She's my mom's grandchild and she's her own person, and I like the way her nickname, Rue, sometimes reminds me of my mom's nickname, but mostly it just makes me think of her. Click the link in the description for the full video. Like, comment, share, subscribe, hit the bell and visit our community wall, and, if you have time, thank you very much. Go to